I was diving some new ground the other day when I stumbled across this cave, which happened to hold one of the biggest crays I've ever seen. You can clearly see it towering over the other crays next to it, which were also legal size. Anyway, what I thought was going to be an easy snare job, and should have been, turned out to be much harder than I thought. I found that with these bigger 3 kilo plus crays, their tails are much thicker, which makes it hard to get the snare around. And looking back at the footage, you can also see the loop seemed to be angled a bit off. I could see the cray had nowhere to go, so rather than making the situation worse than it already was, I slowly backed out and left it for a bit. So on the next dive, I was planning on going for a grab, but overestimated how long my arm actually was, as I didn't realise how much the cave actually tapered off. I've also found lately that with these bigger crayfish, I have the tendency to hesitate when going for the grab, as I've been hurt pretty bad by them in the past, so mentally, I'm currently a bit anxious and slow, which is not what you want when grabbing crays, as you need to be fast. Looking back, if I hadn't hesitated so much with this grab, I reckon I would have got it. He saw me coming from a mile away and backed up. I sent my hand in, but it was too late. The cray had already retreated and my arm wasn't long enough to reach the very base of its horns, and I didn't want to risk breaking off a part of its horn, so decided to let go and come up with a new plan of attack. So the last resort was to whip out the horn snare, and this is the perfect scenario to use it, when it's out of grabbing range and you can't get the snare behind it. As you can see, I manoeuvred the snare all the way to the base of its horns and left it there, because I knew it'd be a battle to get it out when I did snare it, and wanted to make sure I had a full breath of air to wrestle it out. So after a solid breathe up, back down I went for the 4th time, expecting to get it out this dive. I've learnt there's definitely an art to using the horn snare, and found the most effective way is to slowly work the cray out, rather than just forcefully yanking it out, as there's a high chance you'll snap off the horn or crack it. But there's a fine balance between how hard you pull without pulling too hard. However, just as it was about to come out, I felt the horn snare slip off. It was all stirred up, so once again, rather than trying to fix it in the same dive, I just left it there. With these southern crays, typically they don't leave their caves unlike the tropical crays, so I've learnt to be patient and take my time with them. After giving the cave some time to settle, I headed back down, and thankfully the snare was still around the horn, and all I had to do was readjust it slightly, locking it back around the base of its horns, and with a bit more work, out he came. A little tip if you're using a horn snare is to always try and grab its horns with your hands if you can, rather than pulling it out by the horn snare, because there's always the risk the horn will snap off if it starts kicking and twisting. You can tell though this cray was already pretty exhausted and didn't put up much for a fight, thankfully. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate if you could give it a like, guys, and if you want to see more future content, feel free to subscribe. Peace out, guys.